Welcome, everyone, to Mysteries of the Mind. With me, your host, Sarah Soderlund, and I'm so glad that you're joining me tonight, especially because this week in the news, we have had some rather interesting things that we are going to talk about. Tonight's show, we are going to talk a little bit about the recent controversy of the FBI and the Apple, talking about encryptions, privacy, and your liberties at stake. And then we're briefly going to also talk about some recent news in NASA, where they have released sounds from the dark side of the moon. That's right, the dark side of the moon. So, if you've been a fan of the show in the past and you've joined us for some of our alien abduction encounters, even for some of our amazing guests that have talked about their interactions with the third and fourth kind. Hopefully the discussions on the frequencies heard in space by some of our own amazing astronauts will take you into another dimension. And then after the break, we are going to talk about the Ides of March, do a little history lesson, talk a little bit about superstition, so that you can end out this month and be prepared for spring and all that might await you around the corner. Hopefully you're not looking at some meme online of a stabbed Caesar Italian dressing bottle and wondering what it means, that indeed you will understand the reference. So, how are you? How are you doing? I sure hope that you're doing well. I hope that you enjoyed the introduction music brought to you by Beats by B. Don, collaborating with Festicuffs, Mr. Brandon Soderlund, on some amazing things happening at hitrecord.com. If you're not a member of HitRecord and you are an artist or someone of the creative mind, I encourage you to go there. It's brought to you by Joseph Gordon-Levitt, some other amazing creative minds over there on the never-eat-soggy West Coast. And it allows you to collaborate with artists all over the world doing some amazing documentaries. And one of those documentaries that they're working on, a featured project, is called Are You There? Democracy. So democracy, are you there? So if you've joined me on social networking sites, Twitter or Facebook or sarahsoderlund.com, we have spent a better part of 2016 politically discussing not only the presidential campaign, some of the running mates, some of the slogans and campaign pillars, and certain stances and debates and things of that nature, but your perspectives and your thoughts. And many of you shared with me that you are kind of in agreement that we are not so much the democracy that we think that we are. We are not so much the illusion of democracy that we believe that we are. But instead, we are, some would say, an oligarchy, some would say a constitutional democracy, or a constitutional republic. Scotty Roberts, as well as Rocky Stucci, weighed in on some of their beliefs about what our government is currently. And people shared their frustration with the Electoral College, their frustration with the Senate, their frustration with what they believe to be the presidential seat as nothing more than a puppet master or deflection of responsibility. And it was really exciting, both to see the frustrations, but also the interactions from those of you listening. It lets me know that the future children of our nation, legacies and generations to come, hopefully won't be living in an Orson Welles nightmare, but instead might have some opportunity to really take hold of the government that we have, the nation that we have, and utilize technology as best as possible. And that's exactly what the Hit Record Challenge recently was asking people, and what I'm asking you tonight. Do we live in a democracy? And do you believe that technology is a benefit or a hindrance to the growth of that as far as our nation goes? Do you believe that what technology has to offer is making the democracy a struggle? So for me, I tend to believe that hopefully we the people. And we the people have created this amazing technology, the milestones that we have overcome in just the last few decades is huge. When you think back to 100 years ago, 2016, so you go back to even just the age of the Titanic, 1912, 1913, we have some huge umps and tramps and transportation. Henry Ford, the assembly line, coming up on the Wright brothers and flight, but nothing like what you see today with cell phones and the internet and wireless communication and the use of frequency, which is kind of why we're going to be talking a little bit about NASA in the second half here, is because we have created a lot of noise pollution. We have learned in many ways how to master the electromagnetic spectrum and to use it to our, I don't know if it's to our benefit or not. That's for you to decide. But everything from microwaves to tanning beds to cell phones to Sirius radio to Wi-Fi technology to remote control garage door openers to HAARP. You name it. We have kind of learned the art of frequency, even you listening to me now. I am speaking into a microphone that's being recorded onto a computer program that gets uploaded to a server that then gets pushed out onto networks all over the world in many different time zones and then stored on demand for you to download for free and tune in on your mobile device through Tunein, a free download application on your smartphone. That's pretty amazing. So when you think just about how far we've come, you also have to be aware of maybe have we gone too far, or where are we going for the future? Are we being responsible in the direction that we are taking? And so I want you to take a deep breath, because here on Mysteries of the Mind, I'm mostly interested in your mind. I'm interested in your thoughts. So as I talk about some of the recent news headlines, I want to know exactly what you're thinking, and I want to give you the opportunity to chime in. So are you there? Democracy, are you there? Liberty, are you there? Recently, FBI Director James Comey has reached out to the CEO of Apple, Mr. Tim Cook. And he has said, listen, we have this iPhone used by the recent San Bernardino shooter Saeed Rizwan Farouk, an ISIS terrorist. And his phone, his iPhone, which is also linked to its iCloud account, where you have automatic wireless backup right through Apple, it's locked. And the FBI and intelligence agencies with our government, they want access to that information. But rather than simply figuring it out, I know they have 10 chances or less before it scrambles the information, but instead of doing investigatory work, instead of hacking themselves, instead of utilizing their best individuals to create a software, the United States government is behind the FBI in its efforts to push, dare I say, bully, the CEO of Apple, Mr. Tim Cook, and telling him that not only do they want just the information on Farouk's phone, but they want the technicians at Apple to create a software that it allows them to go through the back door and work through the barricades, the encryptions, and access this information. Their intentions are good. Their intentions, they say, as James Comey states, is really about preventative protection of the American people, that they may recover information that helps prevent future terrorist attacks, that the information on that iCloud or that iPhone by the San Bernardino shooter might have information that saves lives, and they want in. Think about your own smartphone or your own computer whatever technology you might be utilizing. As the CEO, Mr. Tim Cook, so wonderfully stated, millions of people store a lot of their personal information, health and medical information, business, legal information. As Hillary Clinton might even tell you, there's a lot of political information there in the matrix, going through our emails, whether it be business or personal, through our text message conversations. It could be friendly, it could be business, it could be political, it could be medical. You could be getting First Alert. You could be getting the My Clinic app. You could be utilizing a range of online applications that allow you to easily store your information. Whether or not you're diabetic, whether or not you're HIV positive, your children's social security numbers, your online accounts linked to your bank information, to your credit cards. Smartphones now even have applications that allow you to go to an ATM, scan the phone, wirelessly connect, and transfer money or even dispense cash. All through frequency and through the use of modern technology, most of which we might take for granted is safely stored and backed up, perhaps on an iCloud, in the matrix on our wireless devices. We keep these items with us at all times. It's said that the American population, the first thing they do when they wake up in the morning, it's not go to the bathroom, it's not stretch, it's not even morning coffee anymore. That the majority of the United States citizens check their phone before doing anything, even before putting their feet to the floor. It's the first thing you look at in the morning. It's the last thing you check before you go to bed. And on any public transportation, you'll likely look out and see everyone staring into their laps, listening on their headphones, accessing their Pandora accounts, and fusion centers all over the world, storing our information in the promise of temporary safety and protection. Behavioral analytics is the newest upcoming form of neurolinguistics and behavioral psychology, and jobs are booming in consumerism today. Consumerism America, as I like to call it. This oligarchy, if you will, led by financial leaders and CEOs interested in our behavioral patterns, our buying patterns. Are we getting married? Did our relationship status on Facebook change? So now Google can send us the coupons we need. Now we're looking for engagement photographers. Well, the next thing might be the cruise ships for our honeymoon. If you're expecting a baby or you've emailed your Aunt Sally that you're going to a baby shower, now you're seeing Babies R Us coupons, and at Target's checkout you see just the right thing, and that nothing anymore is a coincidence. Things are quite easily done for us. The promise of convenience, when it's a subtle interjection into our privacy. Democracy. Are you there? Have you noticed the intrusion? Have you downloaded an application and skipped through all of those check marks that it's accessing? Your phone, your microphone, your camera, your account, your PayPal, your eBay, your Facebook, your LinkedIn, your Google, your iTunes. Everything that we do is linked. It's smart. It's a smartphone with smart software. And yet, the Apple CEO, Mr. Tim Cook, saw just a step ahead. Just enough, selflessly, hopefully, enough, to know that millions, hundreds of millions of law-abiding people could be put in a vulnerable position, a dangerous precedent that threatens everyone's civil liberties. He said it's not as easy as just letting the FBI push the technicians into creating a software that breaks through this encryption, that allows for a back door. The intentions of the FBI and the government might be great, but once that software exists, the intentions of those non-law-abiding citizens, those who will undoubtedly gain access through force or secrecy, their intentions may not be so good. So in order to protect not only himself and his family, but future generations and the hundreds and millions of law-abiding users of Apple, he has said no. He has told the FBI absolutely not. He states the demand would undermine the very freedoms and liberties that our government is meant to protect. So what is the cost of privacy and safety? I'm interested for those of you listening to take a moment and define those words for yourself. Privacy. In today's world, we have drones, we have webcams, the total recall moving banners and advertisements on the subway stations, the lottery ticket headlines at the checkout, and Target knowing exactly who we are when we're there, knowing what it is we need to buy, that we're low on toilet paper. They even know when your menstrual cycle is. Is that too much? Is that too close to Minority Report? Is it too scary? Or is it convenient? Has it pushed into your privacy? Have you wondered how to turn it off? Have you realized that you can't? You can delete your Facebook and you can try to cut yourself off from Google, but your information, your conversations, the shot stoppers on the corner are listening. The new Siri discussion pod that you can buy for your house, the ones that Amazon is now advertising, that you can call out to during a party. Siri, hey, tell me about this, trivia. The government has openly stated that these devices are two-way streets and that you can guarantee someone is listening. But do you care? For those law-abiding citizens, many have said they don't care. That I have nothing to worry about. I have nothing to hide. I'm not a terrorist. If it means the government gets to listen in and probe for those people who might be out to become violent or who might be plotting against American citizens, it's totally worth the cost. But I want to remind you of one of my favorite quotes, something that I remember reading for the first time my senior year of high school in the memoirs of the life and writings of Benjamin Franklin, a founding father and a brilliant man, who said, "They who can give up essential liberty to obtain a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety." So what is he saying? Those who are willing to squeak on a little bit of their liberties, to let loose the noose of their civil rights for the promise of safety or preventative measures, deserve neither. They deserve neither their liberties or their safety. And that's a pretty bold statement, but I agree. Neurolinguistics again. Civil rights, privacy, safety. Civil and political rights are a class of rights, a special class of rights that protect individuals' freedoms from infringement by governments, by social organizations, and even private individuals. They ensure one's ability to participate in the civil and political life of the society without discrimination and without repression. So these rights to protect us, to protect our freedoms, to protect our privacy, to protect our safety, when we start to barter with them, what are we getting in return? Do you feel safer? Are there less terrorist attacks happening? Are there less shootings? It's hard to say. One of the downfalls of technology is that we no longer have the small village or town mentality. It seems like there's an influx in violence, when in fact we actually have less violence today than we did 10 years ago. Violent crime is on a decline, but maybe you don't feel that way depending on the headlines, depending on the Fox 4 news station in your area, depending on the political agenda. If you're feeling unsafe, I encourage you to utilize technology and browse the statistics in your area. If you're feeling like your privacy or liberties are being infringed upon, research why. Stop clicking accept. Think in the long term. What is the convenience cost? It might seem very easy to press accept, and that's exactly what someone wants. So I assure you, there is a cost, and I implore you to do the research for what that might be to you, your future self, or even your children. For God's sakes, my children. Some of the words I want you to ingrain in your head if you're listening: fusion centers, an information sharing center, many of which jointly created between 2003 and 2007. If you're from Utah, it might be an everyday gossip conversation at the local diner. It's one of the largest in the world. Under the United States Department of Homeland Security and the Office of Justice Programs in the U.S. Department of Justice, fusion centers are growing. They have a purpose. They utilize our tax money, and they are collecting your information, my information, and the information on people like Farouk in San Bernardino. Do they really need to push this software? Does someone really need to push Mr. Tim Cook into creating a backdoor? What are your thoughts on the privacy, safety, and fight between Apple and the FBI today? Again, I encourage you to check me out on Facebook, to check me out on Twitter, and to check me out on social networking so that we can talk more about what you feel on the topic of privacy, safety, liberty, and what it might cost to you today. So before we do the Ides of March, I want to jump again to frequency. Seems like something that's just a word, right? What does frequency mean to you? Frequencies. They're everywhere. They're absolutely everywhere. There's too many frequencies on a bandwidth. Or there's too many frequencies in the air. Or there's Wi-Fi. There's radio. There's cellular. There's microwave. The electromagnetic spectrum is all around us. It affects the human body. It affects how we function. And in some ways, we enjoy it. I love to turn on the radio, and here in a moment we'll cut to a break and you'll be listening to some of my favorite frequencies. Music. And sometimes music is pleasing, and sometimes it's not. Future shows this year we will be highlighting binaural beats, and some shows in the past I know I have talked many a time about binaural beats, and just a few months ago we special guested, is that a phrase, special guested? We featured special guest Mr. Michael Esposito, one of my favorite alternative musicians, specializing in musical engineering of the alternative types, sound music, and we talked about tinnitus, we talked about mental health and frequency. And it's something that not only interlinks with the previous conversation of privacy and technology, but also news released today about NASA. NASA releases strange music heard by the 1969 astronauts. Apollo 10 command module, Charlie Brown, piloted by the United States astronaut John W. Young, is seen from the lunar module Snoopy after a separation in lunar orbit on May 22nd, 1969. It was a great year, and it was one of the first times that astronauts out in space ventured into the dark side of the moon. What did they see? What did they hear? What did they experience? Up until recently, it was kind of a dark spot, right? It was recorded, but not advertised. Definitely not published in national media, but we're learning today, made public in a recording of strange music that astronauts reported hearing while on the far side of the moon, out of complete radio contact with Earth. It was a strange whistling noise. like wind through a windowsill. It was showcased by NASA on the cable channel Discovery as a part of their series called NASA's Unexplained Files. And when you heard the noises first reported in May of 1969 on Apollo 10, it was quite unsure of what it could be. Was it wind escaping? Was it something, distortion of frequencies? Was it sound bumping off of a satellite? Was it some gravitational pull distorting frequencies out in space? What exactly were the 3 astronauts on board hearing? Was it tinnitus? Was it paranoia? Was the 1 hour out of contact with Earth scary enough that maybe pareidolia took over the mind? Thomas Stafford, John Young, and Eugene Cernan stated that these sounds, these strange and unusual whistlings, lasted over an hour, and they were recorded and transmitted to Mission Control in Houston. Transcriptions of their text were released in 2008, but the actual audio was just recently made public. Do you hear that? That whistling sound? It's like an outer space type music. The 3 men talked back and forth throughout the hour of the sounds. So unusual, talking back and forth, whether or not to even mention it to NASA. They didn't know if they'd be taken seriously or if someone would question their mental health. They wanted to go on future space missions, so should they mention the sounds? Well, sound engineers at NASA state it couldn't have been alien music or frequencies, and that the noise likely came from interference. Like I said, maybe radio frequencies too close to each other, or the lunar module and command modules distorting frequencies in space. But an article released by NASA stated that astronaut Al Worden, who flew on Apollo 15, disputed that explanation, saying, "Listen, logic tells me if there was something recorded on there, then there's something there." Now, the Discovery show didn't show everything, but those on previous and later Apollo flights have often said that they've heard the noise themselves. On the NASA Discovery show, strange things even from Buzz Aldrin, Neil Armstrong, walking on the surface of the moon, stating that they too heard the eerie, mysterious sounds. Often shrugged off as radio interference, now sound engineers and, well, NASA experts are stating it simply couldn't be. Radio technicians don't completely have explanations for all of it. And what exactly are they hearing on the far side of the moon? This is the first time that you've heard of this. I absolutely hope that you will take a moment here after the show, or maybe even during the break, and Google NASA releasing strange music heard by the 1969 astronauts, and share with me on social media what you think the strange sounds could be. Have you ever had an alien encounter, a UFO experience, or heard strange sounds? What do you think could be on the dark side of the moon? And is it something scary, something creepy, or just something unexplained? For now, it's hard to say for sure, but we are going to cut to a short break, and when we come back, we are going to talk more about Beware the Ides of March and what spring superstitions have in store.
Where are we? What the hell is going on? The dust has only just begun to form. Crop circles in carpet, sinking feeling. would stop to hold their heads heavy. Hide and seek. Chains and sewing machine. All those years, they were here. Oil marks appear on walls where pleasure moments hung before the takeover, the sweeping insensitivity of this still life. Trains and sewing machine, catch me around here. They were here first. What you say? Oh, that you only meant well, well, 'cause you did. What you say? That it's all for the best, 'cause it is. What you say? That it's just what we need. You decided this. What you say? What did she say? Nuts keep falling out your mouth. Between dark newspaper accounts. Cause speak no feeling, no, I don't believe you. You don't care a bit, you don't care a bit. Nuts keep falling out your mouth. Between dark newspaper accounts. Speak no feeling, no, you don't care a bit, you don't care, you don't care.
everybody, to Mysteries of the Mind. I do hope that you enjoyed our break. Those songs were done, the first there, the Imogen Heap cover of Hide and Seek by Fisticuffs, and the second, an original featuring myself, I Don't Hear God. Now, dare we go into Ides of March. The Ides of March, what is it historically? And do you know your history? Aye, Caesar, but not gone. Or beware the Ides of March. The Ides of March was a date on the Roman calendar, Ides Martius, corresponding with our date of March 15th. It was a fateful date, and I hope you don't think you're hearing paranormal laughter in the background. Those are my children. Sorry about that. Just let you know that we are recording live in real life here on Mysteries of the Mind. But the Ides occurred near the midpoint. Really, it's what it means. Ides, midpoint, on the 13th for most months, but on the 15th for March, May, July, and October. The Ides were supposed to be determined by the full moon, reflecting the lunar origin of the Roman calendar. On the earliest calendars, the Ides of March would have been the first full moon of the new year, or as pagans might suggest, the solstice is a very important time. And the solstice, actually, I have a baby born. Both of my children are solstice babies. So it's something that we celebrate fondly, and we absolutely are aware of the lunar cycles and how they affect our lives. And for those of you who might be channeling some of your Roman past lives, maybe you too are aware of the Ides of March and how the lunar calendar affects us all. If you work in mental health at all or public safety, social services, maybe you can wink or nod to that. But why I, Caesar, right? Why beware the Ides of March? Well, the welcoming of the new year, as the Romans would typically say for the new year being in March, are holy weeks, holidays, festivals, beating of the old man dressed in sheepskin, and sacrifices to Jupiter. March's Ides, or the middle of March, marked the beginning of the consular year. The two annually elected Roman consuls took office in the Ides from 220 BC to about 153 BC. So the consuls began to take office on the calends of January, which we now call the New Year's Day. So very similar to like elections and Senate, the Roman consuls took office. So it was a lot of change and festivities for the new year. There were a lot of celebrations and things that were all about, what are we doing and how are we spending our time. The Ides occurred near the midpoint, again, so the 13th for most months, 15th for March. And they're supposed to be determined, again, by that full moon, reflecting the lunar origin of the Roman calendar. And on the earliest calendar, the Ides of March would have actually been the first full moon of the new year. But beware the Ides of March is really about Caesar being stabbed to death, right, at the meeting of the Senate, at the feet of the statue at Pompeii. As many as 60 conspirators, can you imagine? 60 of your buddies and peers, led by Brutus and Cassius, were involved. And this was around 44 BC. And Caesar was stabbed right there in the meeting of the Senate. Warned by a seer, a soothsayer, a psychic, an omen, a mystic, a wise man. But Caesar laughed it off. He was told, beware the Ides of March, Caesar. But he didn't really take that too seriously. Made further famous by Shakespeare's play Julius Caesar, we now get the famous saying, beware the Ides of March. Caesar's death was a closing event in the crisis of the Roman Republic. It triggered the civil war that would result in the rise to sole power of his adopted heir, Mr. Octavian, later known as Augustus, and the Roman Republic versus the Roman Empire. History changed as we knew it, and big things started shifting when Caesar was stabbed in the back by his peers. So beware the Ides of March really is this kind of tip of the hat to mystics everywhere and being aware of the lunar phases and holidays and festivities and the new year and these changes and the electoral things. And I find it especially important this year as we are paying close eye to the elections right around the corner. Just be aware, be mindful, and take note, be observant of your surroundings, and be a little more honest and open to soothsayers, maybe, if this lesson teaches us anything. Right, Caesar? Maybe you should have paid better attention to that psychic. But also right around this time is the St. Patrick, known as the Apostle of Ireland, right? And I love St. Patrick's Day. It's one of my favorite holidays. I have a little Irish in my bloodline, and the Apostle of Ireland, there's so many fun superstitions, festivities, and holidays around St. Patrick. Of course, here in America, it's just a big day for partying, but there's a lot of history behind it. The Apostle of Ireland is the primary patron saint of the island, along with Saints Bridget and Columba. And he was a man who was enslaved in Ireland at a very young age, later escaping to his home, only to return years later as a cleric and even later a bishop. But there is kind of this two Patrick theory, and I would be interested to know of like Scotty Roberts and John Ward and these huge historians how they feel about the two Patrick theory. Those history buffs out there, let me know on social networking what you think. Is it the Palladius and Patrick that we now know as St. Patrick? Is it this conscious effort to blend the two and the historic icons and making it an easier story for everyone to remember? It's hard to say. If you know the story of Palladius and the stories of St. Patrick, let me know what you think. And if you don't, I encourage you to do some homework. We'll talk more about that as St. Patrick and the holidays roll around. But the shamrock. What the heck is that thing for, right? Used by St. Patrick to teach Christian beliefs of the Holy Trinity. It's always been a sacred emblem to the pagans as the green goddess plant or the triple goddess. And it's a very, very special, superstitious plant of the Morrigan for the Irish people as well. But one of my favorite traditions might be if you're from the heartland, maybe you've ever been down to Rolla, Missouri during St. Patrick's Day celebrations. You're going to see people out with shillelaghs beating rubber snakes, and the story of beating all the snakes out of Ireland. Some believe it was a reference to the Christians running the Druids, or aka the devils or serpents, out of power, as all evil was symbolized as the serpent, such as the snake in the Garden of Eden. And in Exodus 7:8, 7:13, Moses and Aaron used their staffs in their struggle with the Pharaoh's sorcerers, the staffs of each side morphing into snakes, and Aaron's snake staff prevailing by consuming the other snakes. But the truth to it is that there are known snakes in Ireland and Iceland, Greenland. There are no known snakes. So it's kind of interesting, the whole story of running the snakes out of Ireland and the symbolic metaphors there to Christianity and other religions throughout history and what that might really mean. But March is also considered haunted March, right? It's the month of Satan in some of the devil's books. An angel expelled from heaven, evil personified, the great adversary, inspires mankind to turn away from God, inspires mortal sins from the Greek Senatus and Hebrew Satan. Do you believe in Satan? Do you believe that March is the month of Satan, or that March should be more haunted than any other? If you're a paranormal enthusiast, maybe this is the first time you've heard of March as the month of Satan. But I encourage you to check out some of the interesting demonology type books and references to March as the haunted month. But also some might say it's due to paranormal weather. The weather changes in spring. Some believe that certain weather or atmospheric conditions enhance paranormal activity, whether it be pressures, wind, solar flares, or lunar cycles, geomagnetic storming. This belief that ghosts or spirits utilize energy and bringing it back to frequency, right? That it could be just energies in the environment. That paranormal symptoms could just be instigating apparitions, the banshees squealing in the night, or the strange sounds on the dark side of the moon. Might just be solar flares or geomagnetic activities in space. It could be all sorts of things. It could be HAARP cranking up their engines. But this information is also important because it might adversely affect you. More sensitive EMF meters, your body. Maybe you have more headaches or backaches during this time, or your Trifeld meters are giving you false positive readings. Or maybe you just struggle mentally during this time of year. It isn't necessarily because it's the month of Satan. It might just be because of all of the crazy geomagnetic storms and weather pressures changing in and around you, the barometric pressure changes of the weather systems, and especially this year we're having an El Nino season and things are definitely strange. Here in Minneapolis we have green grass and 40-degree weather, which is definitely different than the usual feet of snow and brisk negative 40 below wind chills. So we're kind of enjoying it, but at the same time it's a little different, and meteorology is struggling to predict the weather this year. Fishermen and people who utilize weather to predict qualities of life and harvest and all of those March celebrations are thrown off on years like this one. And we try our best to stick with the lunar phases, but even our perception is our reality. Again, here on Mysteries of the Mind, it's important to note the possible indirect link. Before modern lighting, remember, before electricity, before all of the modern technology, the light of a full moon kept people up at night, leading to sleep deprivation, causing other psychological issues. According to one hypothesis, awaiting data support, it could even be the cause of lycanthropy. The Ides of March. So all of you listening in, I'm interested in what you do during the month of March, how you celebrate the Ides of March, and what it is you look forward to this spring season. And also, I would love to hear back from you on Twitter, on Facebook, or other social network sites on how you felt about tonight's show. And I encourage you to touch base with me, send me an email, give me your comments, constructive criticisms, and also what you'd like to hear for future shows of Mysteries of the Mind. And until next week,
Tie me up again. Who's got the clothes in you, my friend? Into your heart now, beat again. Sweet like